Hey, Scott.
Randall? Anna?
Yes, hi.
Yes, we have a special guest.
Yes. We have Anna. Let me take a guess here. Is Metelska?
Yes.
You look like that's close, but not exactly right.
Yeah, because you have meaning in pronunciation Metelska, but in English version, yes, it's Metelska.
Okay.
So it's the English translation of your name. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Alrighty. Well, I am Scott Stahl. I have been with the Flutter community since September of 2017, trying to work to help build some of the things that you see and have here. I'm behind the Flutter Community Public Slack, one of many editors for the Flutter Community Medium, doing this show, and a few other things that I won't mention because they're kind of embarrassing, but no, I'm kidding. Randall, how about you?
I'm a Flutter GDE. I'm in one of the first groups. In fact, before they called me a GDE, they had to give me the web title because they didn't have a Flutter GDE. So in theory, I'm an expert on this stuff, and I am professionally employed now doing Flutter coding, which is really fun. Good thing that happened within the last month or two. So, yeah.
There are lots of Flutter jobs out there. Anna, tell us a little about yourself.
Yes, I'm with Flutter not so long time, just last 5 months. I started to prepare events for Flutter community, but I can tell that it's the warmest community in the whole world, and I want to do more that I can do. And share that knowledge and gather the amazing speakers that can share their knowledge and their skills with others.
Very, very cool. So we just had a big conference, but first we want to go through the do's and don'ts real quick. Let's see here. I know I hit it somewhere. And there we are. Do's and don'ts. Well, first of all, be nice, be decent to people. Treat people at least as good as you would treat someone you see on the street face to face. And so, yeah, don't post anything that's adult content, rude, offensive statements, please don't be advertising things. This isn't the place to be advertising your services, your business. It's not the place to be saying, hey, someone hire me, I need a job. Spamming, that's the big one, is posting the same questions over and over again. If you can see your question twice in the chat without having to scroll, you're spamming. So, and I mean, we've seen it to the point where someone will post a question, then there will be 2 other comments. They'll post it again, then there'll be 1 more comment, then they'll post it a 3rd time. That's not going to get your question answered faster. That's going to get your question put at the bottom of the line. So, and harassment of any kind is not tolerated. Failing this, you'll be blocked from interacting on the chat, and that's not all. Because as I said, I'm behind the Flutter community Slack. There are other people behind the Discord, Reddit moderators. We all know each other. We all talk. We're all friends. We all go out and have drinks. So when one person is toxic or abusive in one place, we all find out about them. And we will all go through and check our membership lists, and you won't be in them anymore. So we have already had to do that once or twice. And people do something and then suddenly find that they're gone from everything in one day. Anyhow, and that is hopefully part of what helps keep the community feeling warm and decent and safe, is people know, you can't get away with stuff around here without big problems. It will come back at you. So we have another special guest, Dash. And Dash wants to know about the last Flutter conference. And you know what? Dash would fly and be free. But if Dash lands on the floor, there is a rescue pit bull here, our sweetheart, who likes fluffy things and likes to take the insides out of fluffy things. And we want Dash to stay in one piece. So,
yes.
So Anna, we just had the Flutter Global Summit. In fact, this Global Summit right here.
Yes, exactly this one. This my kid, because otherwise I even can't tell it. Yes,
Yeah.
we had this Flutter Global Summit. We had it 3 days, really three hectic days. First day was completely for junior specialist. It was 17 hours of non-stop content. You can just find out it in YouTube channels for free for everyone, or just type Flutter Global Summit and you will find it.
Yep.
And 2 other days were for senior developers. It was completely deep tech content with all details, with use cases, and for those who really wanted to know more and deeper. So this is how we did it. And second and third days were 10 hours each days. So yeah, it was too much content.
Well,
Too
you were
much.
there for all 10 hours on all 3 days. Right. Plus you were
First
there
day
getting ready.
Yeah, first day 17 hours, second day 10 hours, third day 10 hours. I was there smiling and checking and
Wait.
contacting with everybody.
There was a fourth day and a fifth
And
day because there were workshops.
Yes, it was. Yeah, but it was after 2 days of possibility to sleep. So at least I could understand where I am. Yeah, first
So
and
you were
fifth
able
day.
to fall for a little while first.
Yeah. But workshops also were amazing. It was 4 hours on Monday and then 4 hours on Tuesday. Yeah, a very practical thing we had. And I hope to have even more for after next Flutter Global Summit, Volume 2 or second edition or year summary. I still don't know the proper ending of this, but for sure I know that it will be, and we will organize it.
Very cool. Let's see here. Now, to give people an idea of what there was in case you missed it, and the reason that we're bringing this up actually is not to say, look at what you missed. The fact is, Anna is looking at, they're going to be doing another Flutter Global Summit in December.
Yes, it will be 8th and 9th of December. It will be just 2 days, but it will be easier for attendees to understand and just to hear all contents that we are sharing, because even for me sometimes it was not easy to understand and to catch it, but I can understand the attendees that are watching it like so long. So it will be less. It will be like for junior track, it will be more like a year summary. We will gather all needed information, what you missed or what you had to learn for this last 1 year. And for a senior specialist, I want to gather 100 use cases that to show that this is what done, this mistake were done, and this is how we solved it, and this is how you should do or shouldn't do. So it has to be interesting but it's like my idea, and program committee supports me in this. But if you have any other idea, you want to hear about something new, you want to know like more and more and more, just contact me, or you can submit form that Scott will share, I think, somewhere. And,
okay, yep.
Yeah.
It is actually the form. You can go to bit.ly Flutter Global Summit 2 suggestions.
Yes, and there you can just type me wherever you want, whatever you want. Just, I want to hear this from that person, and I will check it out, and I will find out that person, and will bring that information to you if it's relevant and it's really interesting for other people as well. So I'm working for you. just let me know what you want.
All right. So let's take a look here at what there was. To give you an idea of what there will be also. So let's see here. We had Faisal with why you should care about Flutter, kind of a 101, 2.0 for front-end engineers, back-end in Dart. Now, there's so many things here. Null safety, building blockchain apps, code gen, calling C library right there, okay, FFI. So how to test your apps, debugging, There was a panel there with, I don't know, some strange guy.
Of course.
Riverpod, Flutter to autocomplete render objects. Okay. Firebase, Material, the new Material buttons, end-to-end encryption. Then there's responsive design, Lottie animations, generating art. I mean, you take a look at all this, and there's even more. Okay, using voice, network calls, async, keys, and flame animations. That was just the junior day. That was just one.
I couldn't say no. It was so good. I had to show it.
So, and I was on the programming committee for this, and I can tell you that Anna and a few of us were digging through submissions for how many months? Oh,
3 months, I think.
3 months?
Yeah, and like last month we already had the agenda, so we just we could breathe a little bit. But you can imagine how many interesting coffee paper forms you will check this time, yeah?
Yeah. So there were a few more, of course, more in-depth null safety, in-depth block, FFI specifically for Rust, which if you know anything about Fuchsia, so let's see, game physics, federated plugins. I mean, there was a couple on CI/CD, packaging by feature rather than packaging by type. That's another one. Maybe we can actually get somebody in here to talk about that. Super declarative. So let's see here. I mean, foldable device support and, all kinds of things wrapping up with AWS and Amplify. So that was the previous conference.
And I'm looking for new, fresh topics for new Flutter Global Summit that will be in December. I was so glad. If you have an idea, if you have suggestions, if you have the vision, because I'm doing it not for myself, of course, I'm doing it for community, and it will be easier for me to understand what do you really need and how should I do it. So, and not only me, like all program committee members, because they're also doing too much work, like, thanks to me, because every time I'm speaking, and just tell me, help me. So, yes.
So the best 5 suggestions as get votes, because what will probably happen here is we will have another spreadsheet and all the different reviewers will be voting, and we'll just look to see which ones get the most number of points. It's probably the easiest way. And then the 5 with the highest number of points get free tickets, and they're not cheap, folks. But, okay, they're not the ridiculous price that some other places charge for tickets. But
for now it's just $49, but it will be long. Like
early. Wow, super
early, super early birds.
Yeah, wow. That's what did they end up being at the end? Almost 6 times that, right? Maybe more.
$350.
Yeah, $350 by the time it's done. But if you buy now, you get big discounts.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Randall, what's been going on in Flutter this week on Stack Overflow and and all of the help me channels?
Mostly the usual. I mean, it's been pretty consistent these days. So I'm answering whatever I can because I'm patrolling all these different places. And by the way, I've got hiccups, so I'm trying to not speak when I'm actually hiccuping. But apparently that's not possible.
I could try to save you, or I could just be entertained. I'll decide on that later.
Sure.
In the meantime, keep talking.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to the next program that you guys are putting together, Anna, and
Mhm.
in the team. I now will have to go back and watch all the existing material and see what I don't know already. But that happens. There are things. It's funny. I was certified as a GDE, but I don't know everything there is to know about Flutter yet, and I consider that a bit of a like a misstatement. I mean, it's sort of like, well, how can I be an expert then if I don't know everything? But we're all learning everything.
Mhm.
That's the thing. So I think only that I'm able to explain things a little better than some people, and that's what I do.
Very cool. Well, I just happened to use that opportunity to reach out to Simon, and unfortunately, he's up against a deadline right now.
Yeah.
I think that deadline might have been 20 minutes ago.
Ah,
And so he's having one of those days. So unfortunately, it looks like we might not be able to get Simon in here today.
yeah.
But let's see here. Let me try to catch up with chat.
Not a lot going on
Anna,
there.
someone's asking where you're from.
Ukraine. Yeah, originally I'm from Ukraine.
Very cool.
Ukraine,
Let's see.
the location where Skype was invented, right? No, no.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's, believe it or not, I
Honestly,
never really used Skype.
Yeah, I can
Strangely
imagine.
enough.
Yes.
Strangely enough. I used other things. So way
especially
back
when
when.
it's deleting messages, when you want to find something that you sent and it's deleted.
Wow.
Okay.
That's no fun.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So is there anything specific people would want to talk about? I'm kind of
Yeah,
watching the
let's take
chat here.
questions.
What
Let's
kind
take
of,
questions.
well, and not only questions, but, for a conference, what kind of topics would you want to see? Are there any specific speakers you would want to see? Personally, there's an interesting one that I would like that the world of Flutter has not really seen. And everybody wants to talk about VS Code extensions, but half of us do use IntelliJ or Android Studio. And Hadi Hariri is a fantastic speaker from JetBrains who has gone around doing a lot of work with IntelliJ, which that also applies to Android Studio. Now, yes, he is also the inventor of Kotlin. That does not make him the enemy. So,
There is one more thing, like we will have,
yes,
like Geekle will have event about Kotlin, so I think that we can bring him for Flutter and Kotlin at the same time.
there you go.
Just give me that contact,
There you
and we
go.
will bring it.
So, yeah, but Hadi is fantastic for IntelliJ. I believe he may even know a bit about the Android Studio plugins, and he's just an all-around fun guy. I've run into him a couple of times. So, very busy man. He used to do all kinds of insane traveling all around the world. So, I imagine COVID may have been able to give him some time at home. I actually tried to get Remy for the last one, and Remy just is not very fond of giving presentations. So maybe we can get somebody else working with Remy and do a presentation that Remy helps develop. How's that? But yeah, I harassed Remy. So, but he just couldn't do it. But let's see here. Okay, and I just got word from Simon that he has decided he will try and squeeze in at least a little bit of time here. So that's pretty good. I'm not quite sure when he's going to wander in. So you'll be able to get answers to all of your really deep and strange questions. that most humans cannot answer. So let's see. Conferences. What other things do you see as possibilities, Randall? What things are we not really covering very much these days? How about, well, some of the plugins for things like sealed unions and the ability to do things similar to data classes?
One of the things I've really liked is the explosion of discords, because there's one specifically about hiccups. I hate hiccups. There was one specifically about the RiverPod ecosystem, which I spend a fair amount of time on. Okay. This is driving me nuts. It's like, and I've had it since yesterday, like 2 p.m. And I can't get rid of them. Yeah, it kept me up all night. So if I'm looking a little blurry, that's part of it. Just because it's been so long. And I don't know any real solution to get rid of it. So
just try to change your breathing, like the tempo of breathing and poses and water.
I've done that. And I actually got rid of it for like a couple hours in the middle of the night. So at least I got a little bit of sleep, but I tell you. But anyway, so I like that Remy is actually on the Discord for RiverPod, because he's answering questions, and some of his co-contributors are also asking and answering questions, which is nice. So it's wonderful that we have these immediate access to experts. Experts are good.
Yes, they are.
And I have to say also that RiverPod has been really amazing in my current commercial project. It seems to have the right ability to connect the global variables that you want with the notifications that you want when those are updated. And obviously Remy had a good swing with provider, but then to also have created RiverPod, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of like, basically Remy developed provider and then saw things in it that he thought needed fixed.
Right.
And so now we get RiverPod. Matt Carroll, that is super declarative that I was humming about. So, yep. And advanced animations. There are quite a few different ways to do animations. I'm kind of curious. Say hello to the dog. You can do animations with Flame, right? You can do, there are intrinsic animations. There are basic animations like tweens that you can do with physics. You can also animate custom painters. So you can turn around and animate the drawing of an item. And in fact, Matt Carroll at one point did a video drawing of an egg timer, in which what he did was he created a circle, and this was pretty cool. He put the origin in the center, and yes, there is Rive as well. We happen to know a few people at Rive, Matt. So, different Matt. He made the origin in the center, and then he moved up a number of pixels, and he drew a line. Now, instead of trying to go through all of the math to move around to create the egg timer, what he did was he just rotated the circle by 1/60th, and then just kept rotating it as he kept drawing the tick in the same spot, and it went all the way around. And then when that was done, of course, there's your next frame. So yes, there is Flame, there is Rive. What else am I missing here? What other solutions? Because there are several solutions on the web that can do animations, right?
One thing that's still useful to look at. Stop the hiccups. One thing it's still useful to look at is everything that came out of the clock contest from 2 years ago. And I'm sorry they're not doing another contest like that again, because it was so amazing to see what people were doing from that. And I've seen a bunch of really, really good videos from that. So definitely check those out.
Yeah. Let's see here. So Flame is mostly a game engine, but it also does fantastic things with animations. And then, of course, we have Rive, as was mentioned. So there's that one. And you can check that out at, let me get that there. That is in the chat now, rive.app. And it makes it easy. And as I said, there are intrinsic animations, which one little thing I always try to point out about intrinsic animations, and it's a lot easier to see than it is to describe. But animated size will catch you, because what ends up happening with animated size, there is actually a well, in the case of a container that's a box, it will be a box. And when you change the size, there is the box that is clipped, and then there is the background. So what's happening is the background changes size instantly, but the box animates its size. And this becomes really obvious when you put some kind of a picture or something in there, and then you animate the size, because especially when it's small, what happens is when you change it to a larger size, the picture or whatever it is bounces to the larger size, and it becomes actually an animated reveal instead of an animated size. To make the size animate the way that you would normally expect, use an animated container and animate your height and width. So yeah, that one kind of bit me for a while there a couple of years ago. Whoop, wrong thing. Wrong button. I do that occasionally. What's even more fun is when Simon and I get to punching the buttons at the same time, and you'll see things just flip on and off screen. You never have that problem when you're running stream, do you, Anna?
I have, because I'm trying to manage everything, and we also have moderators. And when I think that moderator is thinking, I also want to put, and moderator is putting, so sometimes we have it blinking also, because in case when you want to check everything, just let people do their work. No, I need to check everything. So sometimes it happens.
Yep. You have to be sure it's right.
Yes.
Oh. So let's see. We have more chat. Do we have more chat? Okay. There we go. Randall.
Yes.
Got one for you here. Considering a scenario that we don't know what that scenario is, where would we use group of radio buttons? What would be the best approach to play with its state?
Well, what I've been doing recently is simply using a RiverPod provider as a global, as they are, and then accessing those using hooks with use provider, which is going away in 1.0, but there'll be the equivalent replacing that. So it's ref.watch or whatever in the new scenario.
So you're going to put together a presentation about this for Anna, right, in December?
Sure, she wants it.
Great, of course I
There you
want
go.
it.
Yeah. You're not greedy. You're not greedy. Yes. And I
There
have
you
a
go.
train going around in front of me here, so I'm going to mute again for a bit.
Oh, not a problem. And hey, there is the RiverPod presentation you can work on with Remy. So let me see here. Localization, really, the main thing there is a tried and true favorite. Let me pull it up here. Pub.dev. Now, there are some newer ones, but let me see here. Actually, there is one that has really exploded. Easy localization has really seemed to take off. That's the wrong button. My camera is right in the middle of my screen. So, and that's to avoid things like me looking up at my web browser. And so right here we have easy localizations. And it's 3.0. If you go over to pub.dev, and actually, why don't I just make this even easier? I was going to bring you on in a minute after we were done with this.
You're not showing your screen, by the way. So, Scott.
There we go. See, that was easy.
There you go.
Now, there we go. Hello, Simon.
Good to see you. How is everyone?
Hi.
Nice to meet you
Well,
all.
doing well.
Other than hiccups.
Hiccups. Call the doctor.
Stop. Yeah.
So, Simon, here's an interesting question for you real quick. Somebody's fairly new to Flutter, and they're wondering about mixing state management routine or solutions. And while you're doing that, I need to address something with a pibble. It's not a pit bull, it's a pibble. Long story. I'll be right back.
I mean, you can use multiple state management techniques. I mean, why not? I don't know if it'd be practical in that sense, right? Because you would be, it'd be confusing.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm trying to think of a good reason why you might want to do that. I mean, maybe he mentioned like why, like what state management techniques you're trying to put together. I mean, I can imagine that you could use something like Redux as a top level system and then block still or something together if you really wanted to. Sure, why not? I guess.
Oh, and Mahesh, we will never be done with state management discussions. This is the thing that keeps coming up every single show. Somebody mentions, well, what state management? And I think part of it is that there's no real officially blessed structure because the Dart team, the Flutter team, wanted to leave it up to the community to figure out what was the best.
Okay.
So
he's clarified as block and provider. And the answer is yes. In fact, that's a very common pattern.
Okay.
True.
So,
yeah.
But the thing is, here's the thing, right? State management. I mean, the point here is like, they're just techniques about where you move your data and how you move your data and where you place it. Just
right.
Yeah, I mean, provider is more about it does a couple of things, right? So provider's main aspect is to solve inherited widget complexities and say, here's how you can get your data further up the hierarchy, right? So that's your first sort of solution by provider. The second point of provider is that content can change, that you've got access to, that state. And then when that does, it will rebuild the widgets for you. And that's the second thing it gives you. Block, on the other hand, is about separation of your business logic from your UI. And then using streams to move data back and forth between those 2 points. And in that situation, that's completely different thing to what provider is giving you. So the two things can work together. But if you've got two solutions for the same problem and you're mixing them up, then that's probably not a good idea, right? Like, so yes, use block and provider. I do that all the time. So why not?
So on this point and what Randall said, hopefully we can get Groove and Chip in here in a little bit. But in the meantime, there is something that he said recently. Okay. And apparently there was another state management system. And to tell you the truth, that quote from him was yesterday. So, yeah, Randall, you're absolutely right. Everybody seems to think they need to rewrite state management. And honestly, there are so many other things we need more than that because we've got so many state management systems as it is. So
I'll give an example of what I found. So it was talking in the Flutter study group actually of things that we could do with. This one was actually so if you ever want to draw a chart, you need to take a series of data, window it, and then possibly run it through a resampling algorithm to take only certain data points, so the averages of all the values between segments or something like that. And this common statistical problem of processing data and then adding using a parabolic curve to kind of represent it and all this kind of fun stuff. There doesn't exist a package that does this.
Yep.
Just off the bat. You have to kind of piecemeal it together out of different things. And these are the kind of solutions we need. We don't need more state management solutions.
People have been asking for charts.
Well,
I know for a fact they were, because there was
okay. Hold up.
My friend Rob was asking.
We've got plenty of chart libraries for drawing charts, but it's about how do you get the data to a point where it's displayable by a chart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing.
That's what I was saying is he was asking for something similar since June of 2018, because I remember he asked me that while I was giving my first talk about Flutter in Toledo. So, and we still don't have that one. So for everybody who's in the middle of writing state management solution number 450, maybe we could put the emphasis somewhere else.
I'm gonna pick up some questions as they're coming through.
Yes.
So this kind of Riverpod on Flutter feels like an event bus in Android with just a few perks. I'm going to disagree with that one. So key point is the reason why event bus was a concept that came through on Android was because it didn't have streams. Basically, an event bus is a stream. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. It's a stream. You put objects in of certain event types, and at the end, wherever you listen to that stream, you can say, well, subscribe, unsubscribe, as the term is given for an event bus. You can then look at that type and say, if it's this type, do something. So completely different problems. What else do we have? Hey, Nick. I think this is Nick Ford that we know. We'll assume it is.
Yes. Nick, come on here.
Anytime, man. Anytime, come by. In what kind of circumstances would you write a render object widget rather than a stateless or stateful widget? Ooh, good question. So I'm going to give you some tips out on the stream here. So and it is, don't get me wrong, when you move down the layers of hierarchy, the more difficult it gets to write the code, right? So a render object is not a straightforward thing to write, full stop. Just there's lots of guides out there. You're going to have to do a lot of research. It's not something you you come up with off the bat. However, once you learn about them, how they function, the hierarchy, the power behind them, they become invaluable. So I had a complex layout that I was trying to deal with a certain bit of UI. And to solve that, it's probably solvable, but to solve that with all of these, a whole sort of structure of widgets with certain constraints and boundaries, and then maybe to say, oh, when it's smaller than this, let's say breakpoint, then reset out a different set of widgets, and it gets really complicated very quickly, right? That's because you're using that sort of builder pattern to represent your widgets. However, if you're dealing with layout, which is where the render objects deal with layout and the painting of the UI, if you're dealing with something with layout, with these complex layouts, you can move that into your render object and say, these are my constraints. This is what I want to do with these widgets. And you'll find that you get a higher performing, better app out the end of it, because it doesn't have to resolve 10 dozen widgets in complex behaviors when one widget does the same thing, right? So you have to pick and choose your battles. I mean, this one, I'm trying to think of I actually have a couple of examples of these in my gists. So I'll see if I can dig one out and chuck it in the chat in a minute. But yeah, it just varies. There's also, if you're trying to deal with some custom touch interaction, so you've got this. So if you're dealing with, like, let's say, I did like a rubbery sort of slider bar thing, progress bar kind of thing that you could drag around and it would bend and be all funny, somewhere out there on the internet. And that's great, but that was, so if I was to do the widgets, it would have been a custom painter to do the drawing, a gesture detector to do the input, and then a bunch of stateful or stateless widgets to interact and manage the state and do all that. Whereas what I actually did was one custom render object and just did the painting and interactions inside the render object layer. And then I had a set of parameters that were going into it. That's literally how most of the widgets on Flutter started as. So there's a bunch of widgets that still, I'm trying to think of some, like input decorator, which paint their own UI and they handle a lot of input themselves and so on. And there's still value behind them staying like that because they're higher performing. The more builds you have to do, the more layouts you have to do, the more paints you have to do. It's like a trickle down effect. So for the most part, you want to do layout in the layout phase, which means you're doing render objects, doing paint in the paint phase, custom painter, or using a render object to do your painting. It's when, imagine, trying to think of a good example here. So let me give you an example that I can think of. Imagine you've got a petrol gauge, empty to full, and you've got a needle that you want to sort of go from one side to the other. Now, that's something you're going to custom paint. Now, if you, every time the value of the field changes, you have an option. In Flutter, you can say, this is a stateless widget, and I'm going to rebuild the UI, and it's going to have a custom painter and all the rest of it, and it's going to rebuild the UI when the value changes. Great, now that works. You'll rebuild that, and each whole widgets, anything else they might have different parameters, and it does all this stuff. There's a bunch of logic that's actually happening there to provide that structure. Now, on the other hand, if I was just to do a render object for that, paint it myself, and then just have a parameter that I'm updating on the render object to where it needs to paint, I can update that needle's position only doing the paint phase. So I'm not doing layout, I'm not doing build, thus saving cycles, thus increasing performance. If you had a lot of those on the screen, it would make a big difference, possibly, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all about the ease of development. Is always going with the widget layer. And then when you find that you need to get that performance, or that you've got some issues in you're not getting the frame rate that you expect out of scrolling or some other thing, you can start looking at repaint boundaries, which essentially solve that sort of paint layout problem a different way. Or start looking at those custom render objects and working out a way to do it and get some performance out of your UI that you otherwise don't have. And I'm going to, one last point. We found out the other day, so people were talking about, you can make your widget hierarchies as deep as you like. You can nest as many widgets as you like. The problem is it does break when you reach the stack limit. And some people we know found that out. I think they actually got I think it was like 3,000 widgets deep or something. I can't remember. It was like some ridiculous number of widgets deep, and it broke the stack. I can't remember.
I don't even want to know why.
I don't even know why. I can't remember why they were doing it. It was actually in an app. So it was just like a test.
Simon, backing up here. This would be why don't you put together a talk on the whole thing with render objects? And come on, it's December.
That was easy. I just talk and natter.
You do that anyway. Just do it in front of a microphone.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can have it at the Flutter Global Conference coming up.
Yes.
Summit.
Finally,
Summit.
I can find you here. I was trying to reach you in Slack. Now I can find you here.
That's right.
So, yes, please. I would love to give you speaker. It could be amazing.
We once again have the there's a beginner's question that keeps coming up, and we've I guess the best way to put it, Simon, is we've been polite about it, but people there seems to be a lot of hype about GetX, and people are always asking, should beginners learn it? And honestly, we don't think so.
I even
for a lot
got
of
a question
reasons.
about GetX in like that form. I already checked some, and some people asked about that as well.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? So I'm not gonna point names or name fingers and whatever else, however it works, but there has been some criticism in the community around the creators' marketing strategies, shall we say? And his
which creates the hype.
And to be honest, we've as a community, we've been very open, and I think it's been a very good feeling community. And it wasn't until this package came along that kind of there was a bit of cold water made its way into what the community felt about things. Now, it doesn't mean that the code is not good. There are some nice things in it, but from experience, from what I've had from other people in their review, including my own, there's some principles used in that you would not do. It makes for bad code. So, and this is with any library, right? So when you're working with any library, you're introducing someone else's work. So if there's some bugs in that, some bad practices and so on, they're now in your project, right? So you always have to trade off the pros and cons of any library and why you want to introduce it, and is the author responsive to requests and PRs and all sorts of other things. And what we've been seeing is a lot of negative stuff coming from that author. And also an interesting, another thing that raised big question marks in the community was the number of likes the package had in a very short period.
It was very suspect. Crazy.
Because it gathered momentum more than Provider, yet didn't provide the value that other ones have, or the connections to other packages and so on in the community. So,
which was also very strange considering the Flutter team's recommendation is Provider. It's not that it got a lot of likes; it's that it got a lot of likes almost overnight. Yeah.
So anyway, but moving past this point, let's talk about the code that's in it. There's a couple of bad practices in it, but it's also the library is used as a dumping ground for lots of different things. And what I mean by that, like lots of different disparate features are being dumped into it and saying, this is the only package you'll need for everything. We'll chuck all the state management solutions in here. We'll chuck all this in there. We'll give you easy accesses and extensions for absolutely everything.
And Mariano said that it tries to do everything but doesn't do any of it well because of that.
That's the reason why, right? So instead of having a library that is, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do it well, it's going to be well maintained, it's going to be this, that, and the other. What you're actually getting is a bunch of everything chucked in together and none of it is really, well, some of it maybe, but most of it is not up to scratch. And it's kind of like, I'll be honest with you, it's the package that every developer wants to make. And that is every time they come up with a problem in Flutter, they put it in one place and they can reuse it again. However, that's not how you build apps, because at the end of the day, you're going to be chucking a whole lot of stuff in there you're not going to be using. You'll be chucking a whole stuff in there that's not really been gone through any sort of process. So it's, yeah, bad practices and so on have really sort of affected the community's opinion on the package. But that's just not to say, so coming back to the original point of should I learn it? Well, you're not, coming back to the point of should I learn any package like this, is it's making the package is shortcuts, right? Full of shortcuts to make your life easier. But what you haven't learned from doing those shortcuts is the way to do it normally without GetX. So what you're doing is you're wrapping your whole concept of doing Flutter development in only GetX, right? So I would suggest that by all means, look at the way they do stuff, look and see how they do things. Maybe there's some stuff you can learn from it and go, oh, that's a neat little trick. Maybe I'll do that myself. Maybe I'll pull in this
dig through the code
into my project. It's open source. Maybe I can, I think it's under MIT, but maybe I can put this 3 lines concept into my app and that's it. I haven't included all this other stuff, but I've got the bit of thing that I wanted out of the library.
and
But the key point here is don't code yourself into a corner, because you will regret that.
So look, the other point that I have heard quite a few times from a lot of different people is that GetX does promote itself as being simple, but the problem that they've run into is that it's actually simplistic because of that, and you end up outgrowing it very quickly and need something else. So
should we answer some more questions that have come in?
Yeah, really. And that's the last quick point there is, I always suggest take 2 hours to learn scope model. Not that you're actually going to be using it because it's very simple, but it's a great stepping stone to make it easy to learn provider. And then you can use provider and then move on to Riverpod if you want, or something else. But there was Kevin had a really good question here about the camera. So moving on. Opening up a native or platform specific features like the camera. The logs are complaining about the main thread.
So there's nothing coming to that exact point, that what you're talking about is an Android problem. And it's because your application has dropped frames when performing the native transition to open something up. There is not much you can do about that. And it's nothing, even a native app will do the same thing. It's just because the amount of effort in a very short period of time it takes to open up the camera takes up cycles on the main thread. The way camera works is it interacts with the UI and it requires usage on the main thread. So yeah, there's reasons for saying that, and I don't think your users are even going to notice any problem or even care. So I wouldn't concern yourself with it. If you're trying to solve it, you're rewriting the camera plugin, and you're going to be doing micro optimizations in the camera plugin in the native code. If you want to do that, please go ahead, right ahead, and submit a PR back to the team. I'm sure the Flutter team will love to take on any performance improvements you can give. But a lot of that stuff to make that stop from happening is to migrate some of the logic out of the UI thread into a background thread and push it back and forth, and it's very complicated and not worth the hassle to save literally 2 frames of rendering, which is probably what you're going to get from that. There you go. What was the follow-up to that question, actually, Scott? You're muted, by the way.
Yep, I know.
Did you have a second part?
I didn't want you to hear me typing.
Okay, Kevin, you need to go look at my talk on state persistence. I can go dig it out somewhere. I tweeted it at one point. Maybe it'll be
Anna, can we get Simon to do this one as a talk?
I'd love to hear everything that he wants to
actually,
hear.
Though, one of the things while you're here, take some notes on the questions that you're seeing in chat.
I'm doing it.
And then that way we can, even if we can't drag Simon in by the nose, maybe we can find somebody else
What?
to these
What was-
particular points.
Joe, I did the talk for this, and I can't remember what. Let me see. I'm going to find it. It's going to bug the hell out of me if I can't find it. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, state restoration. State never dies. That was the talk. You can find my slides. I will post a link to the slides. And you can find it here. Hopefully it comes through. That one there. Flutter state restoration. It's the talk I did. I believe there's a video link somewhere.
There we go. And going to be putting up a question about testing here in just a moment, but I wanted to make sure that people see that.
I don't remember where. I don't remember where I did this talk.
See, folks, this is what happens when you try to work 14 hours a day. As Anna can tell you, you can't remember where you put your keys or your shoes. But fortunately for Anna, that didn't matter because she was running the conference from her house. So she didn't need her keys or her shoes.
It was Flutter Vikings. It was during Flutter Vikings.
Ah, okay.
So that would be on our YouTube channel right here.
Yes.
Yeah. So there'll be one of the days on a certain time. Was it on day 2? I think it was on day 2. Okay. Oh yeah, I found it. I will link it in the chat.
As opposed to an uncertain time.
Don't go to this link now or open a new tab, but that will give you the link to the talk. And I'm going to put that in as a note in the.
Alrighty. And while people are doing that, Robert, good old Robert, does lots of tutorials. You definitely want to check him out. He's seeing the question repeatedly and wondering what we think. That's always a dangerous question. You prefer putting more energy into unit, widget, or integration tests? And I can tell you for me, unit tests. Widget tests, believe it or not, unless I'm doing something custom, I tend to want to trust that the framework has been tested. Integration tests, I've kind of been educated, shall we say, to try to keep those to last, so to speak. And there is another one, though, Robert, that hasn't been brought up yet that I have heard quite a bit of emphasis put on, and that's golden tests, which is using screenshots of the UI to compare to supplied screenshots from basically maybe from the designer, and to ensure that you are creating as close to pixel for pixel as possible.
The golden tests are actually quite good for breakpoint testing. So if you've got several UI layouts and you want to ensure that it looks a certain way on a certain breakpoint, you can do that by setting your view configuration on your during your widget tests, and that will change the size of the screen that it's running the UI on, and then that way you can see what the layout would look like on a tablet versus phone versus anything else. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pick a couple of questions out here, if you don't mind, Scott.
One quick second here, just to get this up. And you can find that right there. It was put together by eBay. So put this in the chat, but you can go to pub.dev, look up Golden Toolkit, and find that. And Simon, you said you had something in mind?
No, I was just going. There's some older questions that I kind of missed, so I was going to pick some out. So I've actually myself had the same concept of when you have a lot of common dependencies you put into a library, why not make a multi-package Flutter project, and so you don't have to define them in every package. You've just moved the problem. So at the end of the day, what you've done is you've now made a set of dependencies that are now inter-aligned on each other, separate. And now in your current project, when you add a third library, you go, oh no, it says I need to upgrade this secondary dependency that breaks out of the package. Now I have to go to the other package, update that dependency list. You've just moved a problem that and create more work for yourself. So as much as it sounds like a good idea, at the end of the day, you can do this, by the way. You can literally make a package, include all your common things in the pub spec, and then do one Dart file that exports every library out of that thing, and you can import them into the other. You can do it. I don't see the purpose to it, because as soon as you start getting version dependency conflicts, you've messed up. So it's just not
I have an Android developer nano degree, and Simon knew me at the time I was studying this. And what an Android developer nano degree means is that I can walk into any Android shop anywhere on the planet and I can find the bathroom. So, but Simon can tell you the code that we were using for this was a bit on the old side. And we spent a lot of time digging through the website of the repositories trying to figure out where the dependencies of dependencies broke. And sounds an awful lot like that. There's an interesting tip here that is basically very similar to what Simon was saying. Make sure you learn vanilla so that you know what's going on.
Yeah, so change notifier, value listener builder, and stream builder are all part of the standard library. All do exactly, basically, they all do that same concept of when something changes, tell me that it changed. So that's literally what most state management boils down.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because they say state management, and I brought this up at one point, and I was wondering, why is it called state management when what is managing your state really is your business logic? What these state management packages are doing is they're propagating that state and sending it out to places that need to see it or that need to have it. So shouldn't it be called state propagation? And the answer I was given is, well, everybody calls it state management, so we're just kind of stuck with that.
I mean, the other thing is it's like let's not go. We're not going to state management. We talked enough about that.
Yeah, really. We end up there every week.
Any tips for Flutter apps that consist of multiple packages, path dependency? Is there a good way to manage dev dependencies like freezed? To be honest, I'm not even getting a question. Any tips for Flutter apps that consist of multiple packages? Path dependency. So I have this. So basically what you're saying is you've broken up your app into modules, and then you're including them in your pub set using a path dependency. Is there a way to manage the dev dependencies like freezed? Anyway, good way to manage dev dependencies like freezed? I'm not sure what he means by that. Any tips? Great to do that. Helps you block out your code. Yeah, sorry, I ain't got much for that one. See what else we got down the list here. Just to make sure
I'm kind of curious about this one, Festival Tech. If you could elaborate, because it says large applications, you can listen to a provider at any part of the app and things can get out of hand. I don't understand why that would get out of hand if you're just listening. Being able to listen to it just about anywhere is kind of it's what we want to do. We want to be able to have that information, but at the same time, are you sure you're not referring to maybe being able to change it from all over the place? In which case, you want to be careful about that as well. But yeah, I'm not understanding why being able to access the information in many parts of the app would be a problem.
Someone just mentioned use Melos. Yes. So when you're dealing with multiple package dependencies and versions, Melos does help you solve and work with multiple packages. It's got a lot of uses. Melos was created by the Flutter Fire team in Invitae to manage the Fire-based plugins for Flutter, and we've since used them in the plus plugins package for the community. They've taken over a lot of the sort of package info plus. Now we have all of the standard packages. So we use Melos to help manage those as well. So if you're looking for some ideas about how to use Melos, there's some great documentation on their website, and you can go look at the Flutter Community Plus plugins and Flutter Fire as well.
And if there is an unusual talk that I don't think anyone has done as far as I've seen is using Melos.
I guess Invitates. That's a job for Invitates, the creators.
There you go. Remy. No.
Oh yeah, Remy's working for them now, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But it's getting Remy to do talks is a little bit difficult. Anna, your experience with Flutter.
Sorry, I just didn't see the question. Yeah, my experience with Flutter, I just started. Like, thanks to Scott, I just started, and like my main aim now is to gather good content and share with everybody, and keep something with myself. But still, I think one more event, and one day I will learn more.
Anna spends so much time trying to read through people's talks that she doesn't get much time hands-on the keyboard.
Yeah, like honestly, like after reading all topics and abstract, I could build agenda and understanding step by step what to do and how to do. So I think it was good results for just reading abstracts and hearing all these talks.
I just spotted a question I can answer. Do you mind if I bring this up?
It's pretty rare when you see those. No, go ahead.
No, but this is actually an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm looking at this.
So let me just explain this. So taking a scenario where we have 3 horizontally scrollable list views, one after another, and those are dynamic. And then what can be the solution other than specifying the height of the list view items?
Now, this looks like they're in a column, perhaps?
So you've got one column, like horizontally scrolling panels.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is you have to specify the height, because if they're vertically, you can vertically scroll through them, meaning that they don't have any constraint on the height. You've got an infinite bound on the height.
Well, I believe these are horizontally scrolling.
No. I'm talking about 3 horizontally scrolling, right? But you need to specify height because it's the width that varies, not the height, right? Like it's that. I'm trying to give it a good example.
This sounds like my slot machine.
Anyway, what can I? I'm just trying to think. The point is that the question is, what can be the other solution than specifying the height for list views? And the answer is, you need a height constraint, or you need a constraint in at least one of the principal coordinates. So you either need a vertical or a horizontal constraint, so that the rest can be derived from that. What you kind of want is actually an aspect ratio widget, which is normally what we use, because an aspect ratio widget informs to a certain size, and it doesn't matter how wide or big the screen is, it will react and change its height accordingly. So you're not putting in a fixed height like 200 dip or whatever for the height of your content. Am I missing? Some of them is put in based on boolean. One list is different widgets based. I mean, there is also, as someone else mentioned, there's also shrink wrap. You can add shrink wrap to any list view, and it basically you might as well not bother. You end up converting your list view essentially into a column, right? In a single child scrolling widget. It has to create all the views to get the height or the width, conversely. So normally not worth it. There's another complex thing you can get. I'm going to give you an example of this. I'm trying to think of a good example. If you've got 3, let's say you've got three vertical lists of content, and you want to put them in like a pager to page left and right, but you want the height of the pager to be based off that list of content. You need to essentially solve that layout problem. And the only way to solve that layout problem is with either a custom layout widget or to do some fancy stuff with build, because you have to get the height of each one of those panels of lists of items, work out the highest one, and then use that as the height of the parent. And then that is what goes and contains your list view to page it all. So there's there's certain things you don't see commonly in mobile layouts because they are very difficult to do. Not because you can't do them, but because it really makes for bad user experience, especially on mobile when your constraints of your screen size can change. It's complicated.
All right. So real quick before we move on to beyond that, I'm wondering, does it mean something similar to this? Now, this is the opposite. This is a bunch of lists inside of a row. So
I think he was talking about
my
the same
slot
concept.
machine.
Yeah, this is the same concept, but he was talking about it being horizontal rather than vertical.
Exactly. It's the other way around. But yeah. All right. So really before we leave this topic,
go on.
Let's see here. Where did we not just have Tomek, or did okay. It was my my screen.
Hey everybody.
Tomek. Hey.
Wanted to drop by and see what you are doing here. And problems with list. Who doesn't have those?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna just pick out a few more points on this topic. So, yeah, slivers can help with custom scroll views. I think
there you go.
They can. However, slivers are complicated, and that's a whole different topic. I wouldn't. They have their purposes, and they have their purposes for long content. So if you want to do or some custom scrolling behaviors, like some fancy animations that you want to take place as you're scrolling, they can help very much. But I'll be honest with you, there's nothing you can't do. No effect you probably can't do with the standard list view and box view model that you'd have to go for slivers for specifically. It may not be as performant. So it's kind of a case of do one way and then see if you need to use slivers.
That would be an interesting an intro to slivers. So what do you guys think? Would that be high level on the junior track or low level on a senior track?
Okay, so there's already been a couple of talks I've seen around slivers, and they're all like, this is how you use the built-in sliver widgets. People want to know how to build custom slivers to do very expressive things. And what you really need is some very particular use cases to work with, and it's a very complex topic to explain. So there needs to be some visual graphics that are made to remotely go near the topic, and
Gotcha.
It basically means you end up needing a graphics designer or someone to actually do something decent.
And can I add one thing? Because like with slivers, like you shouldn't, because one part is using these pre-made slivers. That's easy, as simple as Listview. But if you want to create your own like sliver, like fill remaining or even padding, minimum knowledge is know exactly how render objects work. Because building a custom sliver is building your own render objects. So,
and even worse, it's building them in a completely different layout system.
And this is like, if you don't know about render object, how they exactly work, don't yet touch custom slivers.
Yeah.
And just a point on that, yes, you can use intrinsic height and intrinsic width. However, they will not work with layout builder. So if you're trying to use, if you try to use a layout builder around an intrinsic height, intrinsic width, I think it is, or the other way, I can't remember which way around it is, you end up with it not working a lot of the time. They have been putting some fixes in for this, I noticed, in some of the most recent dev releases, so they might have resolved some things around this, but it's inherently a problem in the way that the system has to work. They've now got this new, I don't know if Tomek, you've seen this, dry layout. So yeah.
Could you elaborate?
Okay. I will elaborate.
Yes. What's been going on while I was playing in CI/CD land?
I will elaborate on something. Let me get a link so that people can follow along in the chat. So layout is a complicated problem. and very complicated problem. And as anyone from the Android world, at least I can attest to this because I come from that background, will know that layout can be a progressively deeper problem to solve. To solve one constraint, you need to solve some other constraints that need to solve another one, and so on. So your complexity can go up exponentially in certain cases to solving layout and actually work out the size of your widgets based on various conditions. So one of the early concepts that Flutter did early on is say we're doing one layout pass. So they stopped this minimum maximum height stuff that came in from Android and went, we're going to solve this a different way. And in doing so, what they've done is ensured that you don't get into those layout problems. However, there are some constraints on the way the layout works. And when you want to move out of those boundaries, then you have a problem. And you go to the custom render objects and so on. Now, they've realized early on that they don't want to do a full 2 layout pass. That is to lay out all the widgets of a subtree, to calculate some width or height, and then do it again. So they introduced intrinsic width and intrinsic height. And what they do is they're explicitly not layout, but it means that it gives widgets the chance to say, this is how big I want to be, or this is how big I can be by maximum, this is how big I can be when I'm the smallest size. And the UI can make some estimations. So for example, let's say center things in a column, you could get the intrinsic width of each of the items, know how big the outside should be to center everything nicely amongst the maximum. I don't know, some various other layout problems that might make sense to use intrinsic width and intrinsic height. However, this problem occurs where you need to do more complex layout behavior, but you're not laying out and positioning widgets for paint, right? So it's somewhere between intrinsic and a full layout down the hierarchy of the tree. And that's called a dry layout. So there's actually, I think there's some knowledge, if I can remember rightly. There's not much. Yeah, there's not much I can say about. I mean, the documentation is pretty much like just very documentation. It doesn't really give you any good hints about how it works. There's some of the links to some of the component things. But as it states in that first link, calling this function can be expensive as a result of O(n) squared, right? So it can become complicated, but for the most part, they've implemented this in the layout to solve some of these problems. So it allows you to compute a dry layout for everything inside to return back an intrinsic width or intrinsic height. And yeah, no, that didn't really help, did it? Anyway, doesn't matter. Someone just mentioned intrinsic heights and are expensive widgets. They're not. That is not the case. Intrinsic width and intrinsic height are inherently not expensive per se, right? But it all depends on the widgets that you're using on the inside, and also how you're using those widgets. But inherently, they perform exactly what they need to do. They're not expensive out of the bounds of what you've literally asked them to do. So that is, you're asking them to do another phase of layout to compute the width or height, to then to provide it to the normal layout process to have them with a given width or height. Anyway, so I don't know if anyone didn't really explain this. Intrinsic width being the self-contained width of a widget without any bounds, right? So if you it's almost like you can be as big as you like, and it went, I want to be this big. So for example, if you downloaded an image that was 50 pixels by 50 pixels, dips, whatever, you go, what is my intrinsic width? And it's going to say 50 because that's naturally its width. Now, if you said that to a text string, it's to, let's say, a sentence of 5 words, it'll be the width of all 5 words, right? Mm-hmm. However, if you gave it a constricted width, and you said, what's my intrinsic height? It would vary because the text might wrap differently. Mm-hmm. So this kind of, the intrinsic width and height can be used to great effect, and it's about knowing where to put them in. to be honest, most people will probably end up wrapping a row or a column in intrinsic width or height, depending on their layout, and it will accomplish their goals very well. If you've got like a good example of this, if you've got a list of cards and they're standard, material or card widgets with like a drop shadow, and you want, let's say, something to cover the entire height of the card, but you don't know the height of the card up front because the content inside the card may vary in height. So what you can do is you can wrap the card intrinsic height, and then say the row that covers, like, let's say like a left column and the main content, you have a row with an intrinsic height around it. And what that's going to do is you can then have it do cross-axis align stretch, which will say the two columns, the two halves of the row will have to meet the height of the card, but the card height is not determined already. So that as the content changes in height, both sides of the row, both essentially two columns as well, two vertical pieces of content, will maintain the height of the card. That's very unvisual, but it's a good example of use case of what I can think of really would work.
Okay, and just to bring that up right there, Elias, that's basically what's being said, is that it depends, and you have to be careful about how you use it. So let's see here. There was an interesting question about end-to-end testing using integration tests and native code. So once we start digging into native views, and Simon, this is kind of like one of your specialties, crossing the blood-brain barrier into Android there. But end-to-end testing using integration.
Just going to answer another quick question. People asking about like Navigate 2.0. There's my talk on it. go.
Wait, isn't that the talk that you really love so much? Or was that a different one?
I've done several. I've done Navigate. I've done several Navigate ones. I don't know.
I was anyway.
There's a video link. I don't know which one it is. There's a video link and link to code and slides. Go have fun. They're in the link. The other links are in the comments. Actually, I should probably put that. Anyway, go on. Sorry. Carry on.
End-to-end testing using integration tests involving native views.
Yeah, you're not going to. Well, integration tests.
Yes.
You can do that. I mean, the problem you've got is the time factor. So, like widget tests, you've still got, I think, time skewing and other things, like they don't come into it. So you might have to do the asynchronous delaying to allow the native views to start up and do their stuff. But there should be no reason why you can't do it. You would have to.
I think the question is different. How to interact from Flutter driver with the native components, like
I see what you mean. Yes, yes, like have it press buttons or automate the task. Yeah, go find whatever it is for the platform, like coffee. What's it called?
Yes, and coffee is one of them. It's been so long.
I know I can't think of there's Espresso. Sorry, Espresso.
That's it.
And so there is with the integration test, the new one, there is a way that you can write, like in this case, Android test that can run the Flutter driver test, and on that level, it should be possible.
Right, so you're coming out of Android into Flutter and back out to Android, so that can work that way around. I don't see a reason why you couldn't use platform channels and have some native code in. So your integration test ships your app to the device, including all the native code. So if you want to make some native code that only exists or is only used as part of the integration test to press buttons on the screen and run Espresso, or to inject button presses, you can do that. Yeah.
Like I will, like there is a like a PubDev plugin that like made by Stuart Morgan, like one from the Flutter community, that helps with that. So where can
if you can find it, that'd be great. Check in the chat. Okay. I know that I think.
So can somebody post this? Posted?
Yeah, I'll stick it in the chat.
What's the name of the plugin?
Espresso. Yeah. Hang on. Yeah, I'll chuck it in. There you go.
And
yeah, that one.
So
that one.
Is it the one?
Yep.
Exactly. This is from
That is the one.
like Googlers.
Aha. Yes, it is published by Flutter.dev. Flutter on Raspberry Pi.
Yes, you can.
Gee, do we know anybody who's already done that?
Hello. There's actually a nice package, an open source package that lets you do that. I will go grab you the bit for it now. Bear with me. Why does nothing ever want to do what I want it to do?
So right here, I'm going to take a guess here for a moment, see what you guys think. In a list tile that is being used as a placeholder, can't get a gray box in the title to be shorter than the whole width. Honestly, it sounds like it's being given it's being forced into a tight constraint. Yes?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's really simple. He says
center it.
You can't be shorter than the width. Wrap it in the center or wrap it in a line, and then you're basically saying the line of center takes up the tight constraint and fills the sides, and then your widget has free-flowing movement within that box. So you can say a line to the left, a line to the right, a line to the top, bottom, whatever it is, and problem solved. So that's actually quite a common problem.
The best way I've seen to really learn about that is if you study the flexibles. Flexible and the expanded. The expanded is basically just a flexible with tight constraints hard-coded in. The flexible, you can use loose or tight. Make sure that you take a look at what that means, and it will become obvious what's happening right here. But basically, your container is being passed. I'm sorry, your box is being passed tight constraints, which is forcing it to ignore its own width.
And so can I maybe add one thing? So regarding this, whenever, like for the beginners, whenever you put somewhere a widget, for example, I don't know, like the circle spinner, and for example, it's way too big and you want to put it in a size box to shrink it and it doesn't work, try always to put it in align. Like at some point you will know exactly how it works, but if the size is not good, it doesn't listen to what you are saying, put it into align.
Or center, yeah.
All. And the short version really is center is a form of align. Align defaults to center. And what's really happening here, you can think of it this way. If you have a large box and then you stick another box in it, what it's going to do is it's going to pass tight constraints, which is going to force the child to fill up all that space. However, if you put it in an align, think about this. Can you align something that is as big as the parent? And the answer is no, because it's already filling all that space. So if you're going to align it, you need to let it be its regular size and then align it wherever the align widget tells it to. And again, when you use a center, basically you're just using an align with the default alignment, which is center. So here's one for stream people, which I am not.
Actually, I was going to talk about this. So you have sync star and async star functions, right? So an async star function returns a stream, right? And then therefore you can yield from that function. You yield an individual item with just the yield syntax. Yield star is the same as saying yield another stream. So we take all the items from the other stream and yield it, if I remember rightly, for asynchronous. And then synchronous star, so sync star functions return an iterable. And it's the same thing. You're saying you can take a list and you can say return each individual item on my originating iterable. There you go. It's like same as like add all, basically.
Alrighty. Well, let's see here. I don't know about the rest of you, but I am running into the day job.
Okay. Well, I wanted to cover this. So someone asked about that Raspberry Pi 4.
Yes.
So there's a package you find on screen, Raspberry Pi on GitHub, which is some great open source work. However, I'd also mention Sony have been working with Flutter, and you'll find this package, Sony Flutter Embedded Linux, and they've got Flutter working as the user experience on several embedded systems and boards, including ones that run Android. So you don't have to run Android, you can just run Linux directly with Flutter, cutting out the middleman and getting a lot more performance out of your embedded device because of it. So highly recommend checking this out if you're interested in embedded systems. Talking quickly about embedded, I did notice Raf's sneaky little question here. How do you support keyboard input with your own custom Flutter embedder? You want to look up the system platform channels. The system platform channels is actually the keyboard. The actual keyboard itself is just a platform channel, and it sends the character codes over in the events to and from the Dart environment. So yeah, if you go look up input client in the source code of Flutter, you'll find you'll see its implementation for receiving the events, and you can also look at the Flutter engine. So that's github.com/flutter/engine, and you'll find, if you search in there for input client, you'll find the shell implementation on Android, Mac, Windows, and iOS, obviously, for that same keyboard input. So if you want to create your own Flutter embedded keyboard input plugin thing, go look at those examples and essentially replicate what the Flutter team have done for one of these other shells and for your own embedded shell. Done. Simple as that.
Okay.
Do all this hard work.
Yes, easy. Well, you did all that work trying to get the keyboard to work with the Windows adaptation way back.
No, well, it was the so here's something for everyone. When we first got Flutter in alpha, you couldn't type in on your computer keyboard on the emulator. It wouldn't accept your input. It would only accept touch input on the freaking visible keyboard, and it just so pissed me off so much, because every time you went to log into your app, you would have to use the virtual on-screen keyboard to tap out your login. You couldn't just type on your keyboard. So
Simon, you're going to have to go log in as Flutter Community on YouTube and check the box that says "Not for Children."
What did I say? Did I swear? It basically it lets you. I updated the Android and I think iOS shells at the time. I can't remember. To accept keyboard input, even though you got the virtual keyboard on the screen. It doesn't actually accept any hardware keyboard input at the time. So I made those changes. So now we all have keyboard input.
Yes.
Yay.
All right. Are you all going to hang out, or because I have a day job that needs done?
I think
we have been here an hour and a half. Well, go ahead.
Unless there's any other questions, last minute questions from the chat, I think we can call it. Did we put up on screen the dates for the event? We've been talking about everything else.
Let's see here. We did put up, it is December 8th and 9th, correct, Anna?
So that's
yes.
Flutter Global Summit from Geekle. Flutter, was it what dates again?
December 8th and December 9th, 2021.
Yeah, 2 days, and we will gather some more interesting content again.
You see. And I believe Anna had a lot to do with making it 2 days instead of 3. Or maybe Anna falling down and falling asleep on day 3 had a lot to do with that.
We'll see, but it's based on all feedbacks, because people it was too much. It was even joke you could share it into 1 week.
There was so much great content, but yeah, there's only so much that you can do. in 1 week. Only so much that you can pay attention to. But yes, I mean, hopefully we got lots of ideas for talks.
Yeah, I noted all of them.
Well, and there's
Mostly.
an interesting idea too with programming, and we'll talk about this behind the scenes. But for those of you who are here, and there are quite a few people here who do speaking, what do you think of the idea of putting out a list of topics that the event would like to have, and then people picking the topics rather than just going to a speaker and saying, "What do you have?"
I really like that idea. Do you know why? Because I can talk about any one of the topics. It's just like, what do people want? That's the problem,
Yes.
right?
And that's
Yes, it's why
there's quite a few people that know are quite knowledgeable, but they can talk about a lot of different topics. But it's like, what does everyone want to know about? I'm happy to share.
And if you guess the wrong thing and people aren't as interested as you thought they were, but there might have been something else, because I probably have 8 or 9 different talks. Usually at the beginner level, that's where I focused for quite a long time. In fact, for about the first 2.5, almost 3 years, and even now to a point, we were trying to do more advanced talks actually about 2 years ago. And we were talking over the heads of the audience. They all wanted beginner stuff. That was about the time of DroidCon London and a few other things there.
The thing I think a lot of the community has right now is that it's matured a lot since the very beginning days. No one wants to know, how do I place a text next to an icon, right? Like there's so many like very simple tutorials for very beginners out there online, on articles, and there's already loads and loads of talks over the past few years. Those concepts haven't changed. So you're getting speakers rehashing the same content. I think people want to know the more complex orchestration and building of apps. So
there is a lot of that, but the other thing too is we have a lot of people coming into Flutter at a much faster rate than we've ever had before. So it's not like the demand for beginner content has gone away, but the fact is that we have enough people who have matured now.
Yeah.
The demand for advanced content is more than it's ever been.
Yeah. I'm just wondering. So I mean, something that was brought up as 2 topics that I'm considering doing talks on is, one was like doing server-side Dart, what it means to do your back end of your app in Dart as well, which is another great topic. That has been covered a couple of times this year by some people at Google. They've been working on cloud functions and things with Dart. I won't go into the details now. But yeah, some higher, maybe some good example use cases. Another one is, people seem to get wrong, is app startup. So getting your app from that initial state, dealing with authentication, dealing with splash screen, dealing with things you might need to do before the app is ready for the user, and how to orchestrate that and how to make that work effectively. It seems to come up in many different ways.
Something we've done many times on the side is, firing everything up async, and I don't really see that very often out in the world.
There's a lot of options. I think the problem is an interesting one actually, and it's an interesting one, and it's kind of complicated. So I'm going to cover quick. No, I won't cover it now, but I do want to cover a point here. Just an interesting point. If anyone's trying to integrate Flutter Fire, that is Firebase, in with the Flutter app, the documentation shows that you create a widget and call initialize Flutter Fire, I think it is, or something like flutterfire.initialize, inside a widget. And the reason for that is in a future builder. And the reason for that is, if it fails to initialize, you get an error, and you can display the error to the user, or you can perform something and tell the user your Google Play services is out of date. You need to update your Play service and direct them to the Play Store, for example, or one of these other things. If you do this step during your main function of your app, then what you've lost is any error that occurs crashes your app immediately, and just left on like the native splash screen of your app. You haven't got one frame of Flutter rendered. So it's about finding the right place to set up and to start up your app so that you solve a multitude of of issues, basically. But yeah, anyway, I'll shut up now.
Yes. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Anna, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for inviting me. It means a lot.
Not a problem. Hopefully you got lots of great notes. And everybody, if you have ideas for talks, please be sure to give her a shout out there.
But feel free to leave your comments as well.
Yes. And you can reach her on Twitter. Yep. And you can reach any of us on Twitter at the names you see there.
Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
There you go.
Name some social media platform. Yeah.
Yeah. Next week, I just want to bring this up. We do have the guys from @sign coming back. So that'll be great. See what's going on there. That has really matured. And if you're not familiar with it, @sign is basically a kind of password replacement type thing where, in essence, you keep all your data on your device and you give permission via your @sign to other platforms to be able to use your data, and it comes and fetches it off your device. So if you ever decide that you don't want a site to have your data anymore, you just cut it off. It's kind of like deleting a cookie. Bye-bye.
No. Right. We'll see you same time next week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.